Thanks so much, Volker. The honor is mine. Thanks so much for the invitation to present my research here. It's a work in progress, as you said, with Jan. Yeah, I mean, this seminar has high reputation, so I'm super happy to be part of this. As Volker, you mentioned, I will talk about industrial data sharing. We'll talk about the Internet of Things era, where we have communication between different machines and different firms. This paper focuses on understanding the economic implications of the EU's Data Act, the new regulation related to Europe. As I will be moving towards the presentation, I will have limited ability to check the chat. So if there is something urgent, Volker, please feel free to interrupt me. Let's go a little bit on the motivation of the Data Act, right? And the motivation starts from the fact that industrial data is so valuable and it can become an important asset for developing new products and services. But in reality, the vast majority of this industrial data is not used. And this is a waste. And what are the reasons behind that? And so the reasons is that the Data Act is concerned about structures where we have a manufacturer of a smart machine that has sensors that collect data during the operation of the machine. This data is held by the manufacturer, and there is no a clear certainty of how the manufacturer should use this data, whether there is no any obligation, or there are also some legal and technical also uncertainty and obstacles on how this data can be used. So the structure which is relevant to the Data Act is that we have a manufacturer. It sells the smart machine to an industrial user that uses this machine for the production of a final good, let's say, for consumers. But the issue is that while the industrial user uses this machine, the data collected through the sensors belong to the manufacturer. The industrial user does not have access to this data by itself, or needs to come in a special agreement with the manufacturer in order to get access. And the point is, for opening the possibilities of this data through data sharing, is to enable third-party providers to come in, get access to this data collected by the smart machine, and based on the insights they get from this data, to provide some valuable service to the industrial user's production that improves the market efficiency. And that is welcome because in this way, by improving market efficiency, we allow consumers or final end users more generally to get access to better products or cheaper products, better services, depending on what the industrial user produces. And the issue is that this third party has many obstacles on accessing the data. First of all, because the industrial user cannot be involved in this process, does not have the data. If the industrial user could access the data or authorize the third party to access the data, would have done it, because the industrial user is fully interested about the efficiency of its production, wants to be more efficient. But the issue is that there should be then an agreement between the manufacturer and the third party, and this does not happen so often. And it does not happen because of legal obstacles, because there is no transparency over the rules of this access. And probably in some cases, as we will show in the paper, because of economic reasons, because the manufacturer acts strategically and does not want to allow third party to access its data, because in that way, it can monopolize the service provision to the downstream market where the industrial user produces. And the Data Act enters exactly towards these points. And what it wants is to create fair rules for data used by a third party, being able to empower the industrial user to authorize access of third party to this data, and therefore enhance the transparency and the efficiency of the whole ecosystem. And to make things more concrete, let's use the following example. John Deere, a well-established company, equips all of its tractors with sensors that continuously transmit data regarding soil and crop conditions. Farmers, which is the industrial user in this case, who uses the smart machine, the tractor, the farmer has the opportunity to subscribe and pay for access to this service, and get access to some service provided on the top to the tractor by the manufacturer, which basically has to do with recommendation about the best timing, the best conditions for doing the farming work based on this data collected from the tractor. Now, if we want to consider third-party analytics providers, they are not entitled to have access to this data, and therefore cannot use this data to provide a valuable service that improve the production model of the farmer. Even if data access in some cases is provided to these third-party providers, it will be the outcome of bilateral negotiation with John Deere, the manufacturer, who in such a model has a lot of bargaining power over the access conditions to the third-party providers, making also third-party providers less attractive to enter, or if they enter, they create issues on how much data will access, how much they have to pay, and so on. So in this example of what the Data Act does, it grants the industrial users, the farmers, the ability to authorize access to the third-party provider to the data that it is held by the manufacturer. So the manufacturer does not have any right to block entry, block access to data. So data can be accessed directly by the third party from the manufacturer, and if the industrial user is the one that welcomes that, it's sufficient. The manufacturer does not have any say on that. The second thing is that it limits the bargaining power of the manufacturer in this bilateral negotiation over the access terms. The industrial user obliges the manufacturers to share data with the third party, but it is also the conditions of this access to data that are affected. And specifically, the regulation demands that the access royalty that will be paid from the third party to the manufacturer in order to access manufacturer's data should be fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory, FRAND. So in this way, it limits the bargaining power of the manufacturer of what it can ask from the third party in order to share data with it. And I mean, we talk about farmers and John Deere. We can think that this structure more generally. There are more examples that can apply in different application fields, from smart manufacturing, from energy, healthcare, logistics, smart cities, transportation. We can find structures where we have a smart machine that collects data. We have another entity of the industrial user that uses this machine, which has been manufactured by other firm. And we are talking about how to access data by a third party in order to bring more efficiency in the production model of the industrial user. And that is more general applicable. And this is the reason that the Data Act has general applicability. Is not only in one application field, but this structure and model are met in more application fields. So here what we do with Jan is to study the economic implications of the Data Act. And basically, we want to assess their implications for consumer welfare. Consumers are the final end users that consume the industrial users' production output. So we have two key players. The key players are three, basically. Upstream is the Internet of Things, the IoT device manufacturer is the one that device manufactures the smart machine. But also on the top of the smart machine, it provides a service that it is related to the data collected from the smart machine. And we have also a third-party software provider who can enter the market. And the consideration here is it enters only, it brings some efficiency, some value, some efficiency gains to the industrial user. So it can bring some efficiency in terms of marginal cost of production in the downstream market. In the downstream market, we have the industrial IoT device user who uses a smart machine and the services on the top of the smart machines provider by the manufacturer or the third-party provider, and uses this input to provide a final output. By using the third-party service on the top of the smart machine, it can improve the efficiency of production by reducing the marginal cost of production, let's say from a number CA to a number CB. And there are two different alternative considerations we study here. The one is the case that the IoT manufacturer bundles the smart machinery and the provision of its software service. So the manufacturer sells together the service, the hardware and the software service to the industrial user. And the second case is the one that the manufacturer sells them to the industrial user separately. And as you will see, this distinction matters because it leads to completely different welfare implications. So let's go to the case that we don't have bundling. So the manufacturer has a smart machine, the hardware aids, and a software service that it is adapted to the hardware and collects data from the hardware in order to be able to be given SM. And then we have an industrial user, and a software provider, S, which is a third party in our model, and provides an additional software service, SS, which is competing with the software service of the manufacturer. But in order to be able to deliver the service, the software service, it needs access to manufacturer's smart machine data. And for this, it has to pay some royalty. So the timing is the following. The manufacturer M decides whether it enters the market by paying a fixed cost. And if entry occurs, then it sets prices separately for the hardware, H, for the software, SM, and the royalty fee. What is important here is the two parameters of the model, which is of the most important ones. The one is the parameter alpha, which determines the price H the manufacturer can charge for its hardware. What is this alpha parameter? It is the market power of the manufacturer in the hardware market. If it is a monopolist and it is the only firm that provides this device, which is valuable for the industrial user, then this alpha is quite high. It's equals to 1. The parameter alpha takes values between 0 and 1. But if there are other competitors that have similar smart devices, then alpha will be smaller. Clearly, the higher the alpha, the market power the manufacturer has in the hardware market, the higher price it can charge the industrial user for giving the smart machine to the industrial user for its production. So alpha, market power of the manufacturer, is the one crucial variable. The second variable is the variable beta, which is the bargaining power of its third-party service provider S. And this has to do with the royalty that the manufacturer can charge the service provider S for accessing its data and being able to provide a software service. So as beta is high, that means that service provider S has higher bargaining power. Manufacturer has lower bargaining power over data sharing and the royalty it can ask, and therefore we expect R, the royalty, to be low. But if beta is small, that means that the most of the bargaining power lies with the manufacturer, and then it can charge a higher royalty to provide a service provider S, the third party. So at the first case, at the first step, manufacturer, given alpha and beta, sets HR and also the price for its software service, SM. Then the third-party provider chooses, after observing these offers by the manufacturer, chooses whether to enter, and if it enters, sets the price SS, and also pays the royalty R to the manufacturer, because accessing manufacturer's data is necessary for providing the software service SS. And the industrial user, what it does is chooses whether it will buy the hardware at the given price H, that depends on alpha, and also chooses which of the two software services that they are competing, the manufacturers or the service providers S, the third party, will choose. If it chooses third party, it has this additional benefit because the software service SS reduces the marginal cost of production and makes the market more efficient. And based on this choice, the industrial user in the downstream market selects how many units it will produce, let's say Q units, and there is a standard inverse demand function that requires consumers to pay, depending on how many units are produced, the industrial user, in order to buy and consume the final end good. This is the structure. So what the Data Acts do here? So the Data Act, first of all, increases the bargaining power of third-party S. What does this mean? It limits the payments for accessing data R. So now, after the Data Act is implemented, M is not able anymore to charge very high royalty R, because we have this front commitment, which is a condition. I cannot excessively ask for third party to pay for having access to the data, because that contradicts the Data Act. So R, limiting the ability of M to set a high R. And the second dimension is the following. Even if M does not want to share data with S, it is I's choice to select whether data should be shared or not. So M loses its flexibility to block access to data. If I says I want S to get access to the data of the smart machine of M, then M does not have any other option than sharing this data based on this R, which now will be more moderate than before, because the Data Act restricts the value, the high levels of R due to the front commitment. So those are the two things that the Data Act does in this model. First of all, the industrial user authorizes access of S on the data of M. Even M does not want to share data, is obliged to do that. And also it restricts the ability of M to charge a high royalty for this data access. So let's do, we are in the case without bundling now, right? The software SM and the hardware H are offered separately. And we have this competition between software SM by M and software SS by S. So what are the implications of the Data Act here? So let me drive you on this outcome. I'm not going to show equations, maximization problems. I want to focus on results and their intuition. So all this space is in the y-axis, we have the bargaining power of S. Higher bargaining power of S means lower royalty charged by M. And in the x-axis, we have the M's market power over the hardware, the variable alpha. So what happens here is that there is a region, and we try to see what are the effects of the DA, the welfare effects. So after we solve this model, we see that if market power alpha is relatively high and bargaining power beta is also relatively high, we are in the white region. And there is no effect on welfare of the Data Act. Same story with and without Data Act. The Data Act becomes more useful when we are talking about a relatively moderate market power alpha and an increase of bargaining power beta, that it is facilitated by the Data Act, that it is not so excessive. Now, let's start with the green area. The green area covers the whole range of alpha, market power alpha, but it puts, as we move for higher alphas, more restrictions on parameter beta. What does it mean? That if we start from the beginning of this arrow in the green area, and the Data, what it does, it increases beta to an extent that the final endpoint in the arrow, it is within the green area. In such case, Data Act improves welfare. So if we are in this range of market power and the bargaining power increase of the Data Act is not so excessive, then we have an improvement of welfare, we have improvement of efficiency that increases the output the industrial users produces, that reduces the price that consumers have to pay, so they enjoy a good at a lower price because the market is more efficient. Now, as we move to lower values of market power alpha, we see the light green area emerges, which is for a given bargaining power of beta, which is quite substantial. This region is the one that M, the manufacturer, would prefer to block entry. But now, because it is industrial users' decision for service provider S to access the data, the manufacturer does not have any saying anymore, is not able to block entry anymore. So you have more entry than before. So the green area before reflects to the output efficiency. This light green area refers to the case that the manufacturer has incentives to abuse its monopoly over data and block entry, and the Data Act corrects these incentives. It corrects this market failure. But there is also the pink area, which is the area for extremely low market power and extremely high bargaining power of the S, of provider S. So in the left up corner, we see the area where the manufacturer has low bargaining power over data sharing and low market power. And this is the case where an increase in bargaining power, which is enabled by the Data Act, makes the manufacturer not to want to enter the market of the first place. So there is also this possibility that the Market Act, the Data Act, will reduce welfare by providing disincentives for investments to the market by the manufacturer at the first place. And when does this occur? When the market power of the manufacturer is small, and when the increase in the bargaining power of beta enabled by the Data Act is quite excessive. So we have regions where we have no effect, negative effect, and positive effect. And the positive effect is separated to output efficiency, but also more efficient entry, which is this light green area. So what we get out of that, if we want to look at the broad picture, is that the Data Act is more relevant for moderate market power. And that makes us to think, to consider about market power thresholds, or whether the increase in beta that it is enabled by the Market Act should somehow be conditioned on the market power of the manufacturer. And those are questions that I think will be important to consider as we move forward to the Data Act. And we are talking about the case that we don't have bundling between the two services of the manufacturer. Hardware and software component of the manufacturer are sold separately. And but also, in this case, we identify the market failure. It is not only technical and legal obstacles. It can be that the manufacturer, for the light green area, especially, have incentives to deny access to data in order to block entry by the third party. So there is a market failure, and the Data Act corrects it in this way. The problem, as I said, is that for extremely low market power of the manufacturer, and if the Data Act enables a large increase in bargaining power, we arrive to a stage where the market collapses because the manufacturer does not have any incentives to enter. So there are positive, there are negative effects, and it is how we should interpret the front terms over data sharing, a crucial question, because that will tell us how much the Data Act increases beta, the bargaining power of S, how low the royalty should be, the manufacturer will charge. And these front terms should take a specific form which annullates all these possibilities in order to make sure that we are in the green area of the curve, and we are talking about a Data Act that increases welfare. And for this is conditioning on market power alpha of the manufacturer, what should be the increase on beta, and how front terms should be interpreted in this way. This is the welfare implications of the Data Act in the case that the manufacturer sells separately software service SM and hardware, the smart machine aids. Now we move to the second case, that the manufacturer bundles the two goods together. So they sell to the industrial user the hardware aids and the software SM together. In this case, the choice of the industrial user, there is an additional choice. If it buys the bundle, which is needed for the downstream production, it needs the industrial user needs access to the smart machine, and now it comes together with the service SM. Now the additional decision of the industrial user is whether will buy the service, software service of third-party S on the top of the service of the manufacturer. So now we arrive in the case that we either have, if S enters the market, the industrial user has the hardware, but also consumes both services of the both firms, both the manufacturer and the third-party S. And that fundamentally changed the welfare implications of the Data Act. The Data Act, as we said, restricts R and authorizes I to enable the access of provider S to the data of M. And the downstream market, the consumer side, is same as before. The industrial user I produces Q units of final product, and consumers pay a price P, a function of Q, to consume this good. Now, in this case of the bundling, the Data Act, we don't have to bother about specific regions of market power alpha and bargaining power beta. The Data Act reduces consumer welfare, period. And this is because the manufacturer now, because it has bundled its products, sees the additional service by provider B as complementary. If provider S enters the market, it will provide a service on the top of the service of the manufacturer, which in any case will be consumed by the industrial user because it is part of the bundle. So the manufacturer has already incentives to share data with a complementary service provider S. Now it's complementary, irrespective of a regulatory mandate. I want the provider S to enter the market because by entering the market, it makes the market more efficient. And since my service is consumed as well with the hardware, I have nothing to lose because of that. And this means that the manufacturer in this case has incentives that are aligned to that of the social welfare and those of the industrial user. Wants to make downstream market more efficient because it benefits that through both the hardware and the software it provides. So when the Data Act becomes relevant and applies to the market, it will strengthen the bargaining power of the third party. That will restrict the royalty that the manufacturer can charge, but that means that also makes the alignment of the manufacturer incentives and the social welfare more opposing. And therefore, the manufacturer will adjust its pricing behavior in a way that it is not good for welfare. So if we have bundling, bundling makes the DA to have a negative social impact. And now the question is, we analyze the case that we have separate cells. We analyze the case that we have bundling, and we found different welfare implications of the Data Act. What if we consider bundling as a possible strategy of the manufacturer? So what I saw here, and these graphs were generated this morning, so are a little bit different with the previous ones. I repeat here the graph where with separate cells of software and hardware of the manufacturing. Okay, so here what we have, and actually here is also the bundling, is we study in what range of market power alpha and bargaining power beta the manufacturer will prefer bundling. And this basically takes most of the region of low market power and relatively high bargaining power beta. So if the manufacturer does not have so market power upstream, alpha is relatively small, it will always prefer the bundle with respect to separate sales. What does this do? It removes the region for which we didn't have entry under the separate sales. So the manufacturer will always enter the market. But we have also a negative effect. It restricts the region where the Data Act has a positive welfare impact. Because now the positive welfare impact is realized in the regions in which separate sales are chosen by the manufacturer. So it should go beyond bundling. Bundling has always a negative impact. And this region is mostly realized in intermediate values of market power alpha, provided that the increase of the bargaining power beta or because of the market Data Act is not so high. So the bundling is an additional element, the choice of the bundling, which makes less wide the positive welfare impact of the Data Act with respect to market power alpha and bargaining power beta, and that basically reinforces the need to discuss how these parameters should be integrated in the Data Act in order to make sure that we will focus on the positive welfare impact cases of the Data Act. So to conclude, to the best of our knowledge, this paper is the first to derive a formal framework to analyze the economic consequences of the Data Act. And I mean, Data Act, I don't want this presentation to be viewed as a presentation and a paper and contribution that opposes the Data Act. Data Act is a very welcome first step in a real problem. As I showed before, there are cases that manufacturer M even has economic incentives to block entry when entry is socially desirable. But the motivation is to move from the first step to the second step, which is taking into additional parameters like the market power of the manufacturer and how much should be the increase of the bargaining power, how over the royalty the service provider as the third party will have due to the Data Act, and how these parameters being taken into account should be integrated to the Data Act in order to make sure that the Data Act has the anticipated results. And of course, that as the Data Act is now an official law, and when it will be in a position to see its real applications and implications, then I think that we would like to guide a little bit empirical research when we will be able to collect data, where they should look in order to assess how the Data Act in reality empirically affects welfare, and hope to provide some guidance towards this avenue. Thanks so much, and I look forward to the discussion.